Hi, this is Elaine Benfield, and welcome to Herstories. Today, I have a fabulous special guest, one of my dearest friends, who I must say celebrates my birthday, or I celebrate her birthday, Mariclare Scott. So, thank you for joining Herstories today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So,
So excited.
the audience is in for a real treat. I've known Mariclare almost 20 years, and she is one of those. As I start off her stories, I talk about why someone's inspiring. First of all, you might be one of the funniest women I've ever met. I have never laughed so hard as I have with Mariclare. But she has lived such a full life, so much more to go. But you're funny, you're courageous, you're insightful. You are just one of those true humans. And I'm so fortunate to know you, and I adore you more than I can tell you in words. But you've seen so much in your life, and I love you being so inspiring to me, to my kids, and really talking about what you've seen, because we've talked about history can repeat itself. And I think there's some things that you've seen
Yes.
that are the audience is going to die when we had to narrow it down, and I'm sure there'll be many, many chapters, but so welcome, and I would love you just to give a little like, who's Mariclare Scott, and let's just kick off kind of a conversation.
Okay. I am probably a conundrum in many instances. I'm a group of people, really, and I think when you reach a certain age, you probably are. Everyone is a group of people. I know that one of the things I'm on this earth for is to make people laugh. I'm very funny. I'm very creative. I genuinely love meeting people. I still really love people. And I truly believe everyone has a gift. Everyone has something to offer me. Even if the only thing they've offered me is the fact that I never want to see them again as long as I live. But I've learned.
But that's a gift.
Yes,
It's a gift.
it is a gift. And I've learned something from them. I am very intuitive about people. And I always have been. I just didn't understand what that was or what that meant.
Yeah.
That can be a blessing and also a curse.
Yeah.
And I've had pretty much a charmed life. I have to, when I look back,
remarkable, remarkable life, really.
It has been, I agree.
Yeah.
So I really am a conglomeration of a lot of people. I am kind to a fault. I will say that about myself. And I think when you reach a certain age, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And that's a gift. And I am not good at BSing. I am a straight shooter. And always have been, and that has been also a blessing and a curse. Yeah. As I journey through this life.
Yeah.
So basically, that's who I am.
Well, and I think that leads into, we talk about you've had many chapters in your life. You've had, remarkable things, but remarkable experiences, and you've lived through things I grew up learning about. And when I met you and you told me stories, I just have always been mesmerized. My kids are mesmerized. So we've talked, and I'm going to focus on four different types of stories, because I feel like, and then of course over time I'd love to interview you again. So we're going to do chronological order, and you're going to be blown away when I talk about the different things that Mariclare has experienced. The first one is, so you and I grew up not far from each other. You grew up in Scranton, PA.
I did.
And so when you were in school, about 15 years of age, you met a senator who happened to be John F. Kennedy.
I did.
So please, this story is just, so tell us about that. Tell us about the experience.
There were a group of young people who were very involved. We felt we were very involved in the senator's campaign. And we would go downtown after school, and he had, of course, an office. And we would hand out flyers. We would call people on the phone, those of us who were lucky enough to do that. So he came to town to speak. And of course, there were only a limited number of seats. And being 15, I certainly wasn't a VIP. I didn't get one. those seats. But he was leaving from the Scranton, the Avoca airport, and we got word that he was leaving. And somebody put us in a van because we had signs and we had straw hats that said Kennedy across the front of them. And we were all standing behind a fence and we could see his plane. We saw the cars pull up. We saw him get out of his car and we were all cheering and yelling and cheering. And he came over to talk to us.
And do you remember that moment? Because he was charismatic and handsome and just
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
So when you saw him, were you like, I mean, I can't even imagine that elation because there's not many people, I think, honestly, today that do that type of
I
like.
agree.
And so when you saw, I can't even imagine that emotion.
He was gorgeous and he came over and he was so genuine in his smiling and his gratitude for us to be there. And he shook our hands, and I remember putting my hand out. And the one thing that I can still feel it today, I can recreate this in my mind. His hand was so warm.
Yeah.
And I made it all about me. And I thought, look how warm he is, shaking my hand, not realizing he had shaken thousands of hands. His hand was probably hot from shaking all those hands. But oh yeah, it was such a thrill. And he looked me in the eye. I can honestly say there, and I'm sure everyone felt that about him. There was a genuine human connection, which I think made him pretty special as far as being a president.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was respected. He really
very. I mean, and of course, heartbroken when he was
and
not
why
able
don't we go ahead and talk about? We just were talking about that with my son Alexander. So the moment, because Alexander wanted to know, do you remember when he was shot?
Yes.
And so if you want to tell that story, because you lived through, so you met him at 15. He was a senator. He ended up getting into office, and like tell about the moment when, you found out he was, shot.
And we hung on his speech writers were brilliant. And the way he delivered them, and we hung on every word, and we wanted to be a beacon of light. All of us, the whole group of us, wanted to do good for the world. And I remember I went to Marywood College, an all-girls Catholic college at the time. It's co-ed now. And on Friday afternoons, we were off. Yeah. And we would go downtown to Scranton and we would have lunch. There was a group of us. And then I would take the bus home. And the bus route went right by the cathedral. And there was a huge Catholic church, and then the cathedral had a school. And I remember as the bus came toward the cathedral, all the traffic was stopped, and the children were getting out of the school, and they were all crying. And the nuns that were shepherding them across the street were crying, and they were openly crying. And I remember the bus driver stuck his head out the window and he must have said, "What's going on?" And then he turned around to us on the bus and said, "Oh my God, the president's been shot." And there was that horrible moment where you couldn't believe it, first of all.
Yeah, disbelief. Really.
Total. And then he literally got off the bus. Obviously, he put it in park or he turned it. I don't remember. But we all got off the bus and we were in this crowd of such sorrow with the kids and the nuns and all the I mean, everything. When I tell you, everything came to a stop. And when we started back on the bus, people were openly crying, including myself. And when I got off at my stop and I walked up to William Street, which is the street on which I lived, and everybody, there wasn't one house that people were not all out on the street
Yeah.
hugging one another and sobbing and crying. It was such a moment of sheer
Yeah.
terror and sorrow. It was horrible. I will never, ever forget it. Never.
Yeah. And it's, you and I talked about he was one of a kind. I
Absolutely.
don't know if
Absolutely.
I don't know if the words breed people like that, but he had that charisma and he was trying to make such a difference. And you've lived through, there's other, obviously, Martin Luther King and his brother Bobby, and there's so many,
All of them.
Malcolm
Yes.
X, you lived through all of that. Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable that, you unfortunately saw all these different pieces. So jumping into the next one for me is very near and dear to my heart, which is the burning of the bras.
Oh, yes.
Like, and that's what, about 1968, like late 60s?
69.
69.
69.
Okay.
And
So this is fascinating to me because I just always remember hearing about it. I saw the photos, but then when you told me like your experience, I've never met anyone that was there. So I'd love you to talk about that.
It was such a fantastic time to be alive. As
And
a
you were
woman.
living in New York at the time.
I had taught for 3 years in New Jersey. I was a drama major, and the gentleman who directed me in shows when I was in college was doing a show in New York off Broadway, and he had called me and asked if I wanted to be in it, and of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to give that opportunity up, and it was a musical comedy improv called Graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was in New York, and it was the beginning of the women's movement.
Mm-hmm. And was there a lot of talk, like, because nowadays we have the phone and we have like, but was it like in the like cover of magazines and newspapers, and was that how the buzz was
and
really?
it really was word of mouth at that point.
Yeah.
And of course, because I was in the show in the evening, and in the daytime I worked at IBM. What a dichotomy, what? And I met very, very creative people at IBM also. But there was a lot of talk about women taking their power and being comfortable with the whole idea of that. And questioning what our role had been up to that point, which the burning of the bras came about. And I remember going to a meeting and had no idea who these women were and how amazingly important they would become. And it was Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, Betty Friedan. There were three women sitting on a stage, and they talked about the women's movement and how important it was to them.
And you before that never had that type of cohesion with women really saying we need have rights. We should, because at that time in the late 60s, women really didn't have.
Oh no, but no.
Like I tried to explain to my kids that we couldn't get credit cards until a certain
yes.
And so that to have those women rally together to say, hey, we need to do something to support us.
Well, it was very patriarchal, and then going to an all-girls Catholic school and seeing these incredible women my own age and a few years older doing these magnificent things, and nobody knew about them, and not only did they not know about them, nobody cared about it, or it would seem to be so. But anything a man did was celebrated to the nth degree, and I went along with that. I thought that was my part in life. And to hear their ideas, it literally opened not just my brain and my heart, but my soul. I remember thinking, oh my God, this makes perfect sense to me.
Because no one thought of it. No. They really revolutionized women and I know we're going to get into the equality of where women should be, but that's to me that they had the courage and then were able to get women to support them.
And we were courageous. Because
absolutely
we felt we had the right on our side, and we believed that anything was possible. I am telling you, the 60s were an incredible time. to be a woman, to
Do you,
be.
yeah, well, and just because to me, I look at that time, as you said, it was almost to some degree the height of where women should be
Yes,
reaching it. And
yes,
you and I have talked about we've gone backwards. And so I wouldn't mind like talking a little bit about like,
tremendous, like,
are you like disheartened to some degree about it? And I know you and I, we've talked about this, and it's just to have that. And I still see Gloria Steinem, like, I'm still respect, what the women did, but do you think we can boomerang back to women actually being equal? Because I feel like we were on a great trajectory. And honestly, the last maybe 5, 6, whatever, 7 years, totally different. We're second class citizen again.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going back to me to the dark ages of, I'm questioning, why did I burn my bra? Why did I marched for equal rights for women to be able to have an abortion if that was their choice. We are so far going backwards to me that it's beyond disheartening to me. It's incredible, and it's very disheartening. It makes my soul hurt
Well, and I
to
think,
see this.
and I question because, I talk about, and I'm so comfortable talking about these topics with my kids. I believe that they're the generation that's going to change it back.
So
I have wholehearted faith in all of them
I do
because
too.
I feel like when we talk about this a lot, like my kids don't understand why there is no equality across everything, whatever race, whatever religion, whatever. But we just need, unfortunately, there's a group that just keeps holding us back
Well,
in
we
society.
need stronger women to
Yeah.
come to the fore.
And
We
fight.
really do. We I was a hippie also. I mean, this was our sign.
Yeah.
This
And
is the sign now.
I,
It's like, what happened? We had such hope that we could all get along and we could all
Yeah.
work toward a common goal, women and men.
Yeah.
It was just a wonderful time, I'm telling you.
Oh
It was
yeah.
a wonderful time to be alive.
Well,
Peaceful time.
and let's go into, so Mary Claire and I both, our birthday's August 15th. But one of the things I'll never forget you telling me about, and I was in awe because once again, I've never met anyone who went to Woodstock.
Yes.
So
yes,
please
yes.
tell me about Woodstock, and like, how'd you hear about it? Go into like, and did you ever think it would be the Woodstock that it was? So talk to me.
We
Talk to
were
us
all
about that.
sitting at a friend's apartment in New York.
Mhm.
And it was my birthday, and everybody was saying, "What do you want to do? We need to do something exciting.
love that.
Let's do something exciting." And I said, "Okay, well, let's."
And
talk
how
about
old
what
were you
we-
at that time?
Let's
Sorry.
see. I was 22.
Yeah.
22.
Wow.
And someone said, "There's this festival in upstate New York, a music festival."
Mhm.
And so we were trying to figure out how long would it take to get there. And literally, one of my friends had a Volkswagen bus. I am not making this up.
It's the quintessential Woodstock story.
God, yes. So we all piled
How
into
many
the bus.
people? How many
There
people?
were 6 of us. We all piled into the bus, and we left early on the Friday. So we beat all that horrible traffic. I mean, they closed the New York Thruway. They
Yeah.
shut it down.
I saw images of it, like cars just were
Mhm.
abandoned
Yeah.
because there
Oh, yeah.
was no one could
Right.
move, and people just were like, "We're just going to walk the rest."
So we were able to literally pull the bus in, and we went way into the property and parked the bus and watched and it seemed like in an instant to fill up, really.
And
We-
and it was like a field,
huge field.
huge field, and you saw the stage, and
Saw the stage.
That's wild.
And we left the bus and moved closer, so we were really up in the
Mhm.
front. And we saw Richie Havens. I didn't even know who Richie
Mhm.
Havens was. I saw him come out, and he began to play. And God bless him. I learned much later that the next acts were stuck on the thruway, so they couldn't get through. And he had to sing his song over
Yeah, I
and
remember
over
you
and that's the truth.
I remember you saying that it was like no one
But
knew at the time.
Nobody cared. Everyone, when I tell you the joy and the love and the hi, how are you? And the talking to one another. There was no I'm not making this up. There was no animosity. There were no problems. Everybody was so happy. Now, a lot of people were stoned, and that made them even happier.
Yeah. But it was
But
peaceful. There
oh,
wasn't.
there was no violence,
No.
none. It wasn't even in anyone's mind. And then, as the day progressed and into the night, the music was incredible.
The best of the best at that time.
Oh my
Who was your
God.
favorite? Because, there's so many like, who stuck out to you as that performer that you were like, oh my God, I saw them
Crosby,
live?
Stills, Nash, and Young. That's when they were
Yeah,
set.
yeah,
Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. And their harmonies.
yeah,
They sang Our House.
yeah.
Is
That's
a
one of my.
very, very, very fine
It's one of my
house.
favorite songs.
Oh my God, to this day it is. And
Yeah.
their harmony. I mean, they stopped playing and they just sang
Yeah,
in that harmony. And you could hear a pin drop. You could hear a pin drop
that's so
while they
incredible.
were singing. And then on the other side of the coin, Sly and the Family Stone. Oh my God in heaven. They played at night. I had never seen a woman play the trumpet. I
Yeah.
don't know why. I just never thought about, oh my God in heaven.
Yeah.
And they were singing, "Gonna Take You Higher." I
It's
don't even know if there are words to describe it.
How was the weather from it?
Oh, well, then it rained.
Because those are the pictures that I saw.
And I mean, they were sliding in the mud, but we were far away.
Mhm.
We had a ton of people inside the van because everybody, I mean, no one was like, no, 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 you can't. No,
Yeah,
this
you
is
walked
our
everyone.
van, you know.
Yeah,
Oh God, everybody was pouring into the van.
yeah,
So we could see the people doing that. I was not down in that
Yeah.
at that point, but the music never stopped.
for days. So you got there
Days,
before.
yeah.
Like, how many days do you remember
We
then?
were there the whole weekend. We were there the whole
Unbelievable.
weekend.
And do you remember who was the last person you remember hearing
Oh
perform?
God, who was the last person?
And you at the end did it slowly, people started leaving, and it was like, oh my God, the high of the event. And like, do you
Well,
just,
you were still high from that event. It was such
yeah,
I realize now we're just all energy and the vibration of that kind of energy.
Yeah.
I do remember, because I am a very practical person, looking at the mess
that would
that
be
was
me.
left, thinking, oh my God,
Someone
who's
has
gonna
to.
clean this up?
Yeah.
But there were lots of people there that
To
left to clean. They were
Yeah.
cleaning it up
Yeah.
as we left.
Well, I think it's one of the most iconic events for music. Nothing, no matter what they try with all these modern Coachella and whatever, you can't describe
No.
that time because it was the height of all those.
And
That
like
music.
Coachella's all about fashion and who are you wearing.
Yeah.
It's all about money. And this was just
Pure.
about human beings interacting. That's all it was. And enjoying something that was so beautiful.
Do you ever, when you look back on that, did you understand the magnitude of how that, or you just were living in the moment and then later you're like, oh my God, I was actually at Woodstock. Like,
On
when did
some
you,
level,
you knew?
I knew that this was an amazing moment in my life. And I don't know how I knew that, but I did know it.
Yeah.
And I had no idea it would become that monumental at all. I saw Jimi Hendrix. I mean, I saw
he's the
people
one that yeah.
There were so many. It wasn't the Who, and I can't name them all. That one was better than the other.
For 3 full days.
It never stopped.
Do you remember
played constantly? It never stopped.
when you went home that night and went back into your bed? Do you remember being like, I had one of the most wonderful weekends?
Yes, I did remember that. I did. And we talked about it for months afterwards. The group, and we stayed in touch, most of us, until, unfortunately, at a certain age, people start passing away.
Do you have any
And
photos from it? You and I
I
talked about.
don't. People didn't take pictures
know.
back then.
Remember the one you and I were just, there was a picture of this, there's an iconic photo of a
Yes.
couple with the blanket.
I love it.
And
then
they just recreated it, and they've been together for like
they got married.
50
Yeah,
years. And it's
I
this,
loved it.
but
I
there
loved
was no
seeing
photo.
that.
And you see photos from the journalists who went, and you see everything you mentioned. Like I was, it was 72, wasn't it? 72 or 70. So I was born
69.
69, sorry. So I was is a few years before I was born, and I remember all those photos. But you to have courage, like my mother was, obviously she came from Germany and whatnot, but she would have never had the courage almost. Like she just, and my father, they didn't understand that type of like what that presence of the music and the fact that you're like, hey, what am I going to do my birthday weekend? And it's like,
But
that's
I mean, I was
amazing.
a drama major. There was the arts. The one of the many things Mary would gave to me was my love of the arts. It was what they called back then a fine arts college, and you got a little bit of everything.
So your appreciation was
Oh my God, yes. And our orchestra, the Marywood Orchestra, all women, filled the stage. It was a huge stage. Every Friday they played. We had an assembly every Friday, and they played, and they were magnificent, all of them. My love of music and art and theater, all of that came from that school, really. My introduction to all of that.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I mean, there's so many others. I mean, just what you've seen and what you in your mind can relive is really incredible. So, not to top, well, we will top. So, I'd love you to talk about someone who is near and dear to all of our hearts. And we did a march with John Lewis, and he had his last march. We were here in Atlanta, and my family and we all protest.
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
you
right.
did. Oh,
what was it
wonderful.
for gun reform?
Yes.
And he was the speaker. We all followed him. But, I remember him, speaking and the stage. And it was for my children who, especially one of them is such an activist. And so, but you had an experience. So I'd love you to talk about your interaction, because he, to me, what a human, just as my mom would say, a mensch, like just this incredible person.
That's a perfect word. I love that word.
Yeah,
I learned that word in New York. I had never heard that word before, and it's perfect for him.
So tell this is a really funny story.
It's a funny story. There was a woman who started a group in Jackson, Mississippi, and she had always wanted to be a queen of some sort in a parade. And so she founded what was called the
sweet potato
queens. And her uncle or her cousin had a sweet potato farm, and she wanted desperately to be in this. They had a huge St. Patrick's Day parade, and she wanted to be a queen, and she wanted to ride on a float. And he said, well, I don't know if you can call this a float, but you can ride on the back of the sweet potato truck on a flatbed. And people threw out beads and candy and things like that. And she threw out sweet potatoes, and she had to be very careful not to hit
anyone.
But she was, she wrote a column in the newspaper in Jackson, Mississippi. And so she founded a group of women. And what did you say?
I just looked up, and it was like 100 and like some chapters around the world. Like it's still going on, and I'll put a link into it. It's fascinating.
So a group of my friends and I became sweet potato queens. And in order to do that, there was a uniform that you had to wear. Now you could expand on the uniform, but you had to look like a beauty queen. And in order to do that, you had to get a huge bouffant red wig, all different shades of red hair. You had to wear an overabundance of makeup. Whatever outfit you wore had to be covered in sequins. You had to wear majorette boots with the tassels in front of them. And then you could make your costume whatever you wanted. And the women that I was friends with were from Marietta. And so we were the Marietta Melon Queens. And we were regaled with sequins of green and pink. And when we raised our arms, we wore a cape, and it was a slice of a watermelon. And so we would be in the parade, and periodically we would become the
I can
Marietta Melon
envision
Queens.
it.
And also one huge, and no pun intended, part of the costume was you had to wear a huge bosom. It was a total exaggeration of what a beauty queen would be. And the creativity of these women, it was all women. There was one man, Lance Romance. And Lance, oh my God, I don't remember his name, and I'm sorry. Please look it up. He was the same man every year, and he had jet black hair that he just let grow long, and he had like a pink satin, a great body, pink satin jacket on, and he would take his jacket off and slowly run it
Oh
down.
my God.
Oh my God, and now I guess now she has tater tots. I mean, there's a whole big group of people.
It's
If
fascinating.
you ever get the chance and you are near Jackson, Mississippi on St. Patrick's Day, go to this parade. You will never forget it.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. Anyway, so there's a parade in Atlanta, and I believe it was in Buckhead. I can't remember exactly. Maybe it was in Vinings.
And you said it was after the Olympics, so like
Yes.
after
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
1996 or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
In the 2000s, I believe. And we were asked, a group of us, if we would represent the sweet potato queen. So at the time, I had a convertible, a red convertible. So we put our Marietta Melon Queen outfits on and put all our makeup on. And we're standing in line because the parade hadn't started. And this man came up and said, I don't know why he said it to me, but he did. And he said, I have a dignitary, and he's having a hard time sitting on top of that bar in the convertible. And I said, oh, I know exactly, because I was sitting on that bar. I said, I think I have another blanket that you're welcome to use. He said, I'll find you after the parade and I'll give it back to you. So we're still standing in line, and I'm facing front, and I hear this voice behind me saying, thank you so much. That was so kind of you to offer your blanket. And I turned around, and it was John Lewis. And it literally took my breath away. He was when I tell you, the last person I thought was going to be behind me. And he took my hand in his, both of his, and he never let go of it. And he was looking into my eyes and talking, and I was telling him how much I loved him and admired him. And all the while he was talking to me, I kept thinking, oh my God, these two hands have held the hands of Martin Luther King, and now they're holding mine. And again, the hands were warm.
Remember?
How warm his hands were. And I thought, oh my God, I've touched JFK and now John Lewis. How lucky am I as a human being? This was such a gift to me. He could not have been nicer. And I told him how much I loved Martin Luther King and what he stood for, and how much I admired and loved him and what he stood for. And once again, he passed and my heart broke.
Yeah.
What a great human
And once
being.
what we talked about is the theme really is there'll never be someone like him.
No.
And he just was really just
And
an eloquent,
humble.
another, I mean, just as we talked about Mensch, he really was.
And so
Yeah.
both of them, JFK and
Yeah.
humble,
Yeah.
when I met them anyway.
Yeah,
Very, very
I mean,
humble.
So when you look back at all these chapters of your life, when were you the happiest? No offense to the children, she's fabulous,
Oh my
two
God,
children.
I
But
love my children and grandchildren.
but was there a time where you're like, this is where what stage in your life were you the happiest, do you think?
I believe that was one stage where I was very happy. When I have to run back and just go back and tell you, when I worked at IBM, we had our coffee breaks.
Yeah.
They were catered, and we had silver teapots.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
what a different world, you
Yeah.
know? And we had tea, and then we had something, soft drinks in the afternoon. We had huge break. It was in the Product Display Center in New York City. And I'd say the happiest time of my life was in my 30s
Mm-hmm.
because I had come through the 20s
Mm-hmm.
and life was still good as a woman in the 30s.
Yeah.
We were still felt that we had something to say and we were important, and what we had to say was important.
Yeah. And mattered. Yeah.
And now I don't.
So what is
We've
your
also we've almost become a caricature of something that is a throwaway.
yeah.
We it's frightening to me and sad.
Yeah.
Um, I pray that there are people, women, that will come forward
Yeah.
and that will rally other women. Um, I
And I
don't.
hope it's women like me, my generation, that's raising children
Uh,
to be thoughtful and to be caring and to give and respect for one another. And
yes.
which you knew my father, and his point was always character's the most important thing. He's
Oh,
like beauty, intelligence,
oh,
nothing. Having character is something you cannot replace. That
no,
is so important.
no.
And I feel our society has lost a little bit of that character of being good, and not just a
Yeah.
little, but so if you had to give advice to a woman today, what advice would you give them? Like, what's the one piece of advice,
Know your worth. You are absolutely incredible beings. Women are incredible. There is nothing we can't do. And we can do so many more things than men can do. And I'm not taking anything away from them.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is reclaim the beauty and the power that's in within each and every one of you, and bring that forward, as you said, to your children,
Mhm.
so that your male children will respect what a woman is, who she is, and what she has to say. We need to bring that back. The world will not be the same without it.
Well, not to diminish that male importance is still there. Us being more important or equal isn't diminishing a male's
No,
world.
no,
And
not
that
at
to me is
all.
that it's not a competition.
No,
It's
no,
not, there's always this image of like a pie. We're not taking your piece. We just
no,
want
not at
to have our
all.
own piece.
Thank you.
And that I think
Thank you.
is really important.
Exactly.
So, let me think. There's so many things I mean, we could talk forever. So what did like, I want to, um, tell you how important you have been in my life,
Oh,
that you've
Marilyn,
been
thank
so
you.
inspiring. And I've seen you gone through challenges and raising grandkids and raising your fabulous she's two fabulous children. It's you were from the minute I met you supportive and positive. You helped me literally become a mom. You saw me pregnant. Literally, we met, I was
Yes.
pregnant with my daughter, and
Right.
you inspire me really truly every day. And I
Oh,
just
thank you.
what you've lived
God.
through and seen is just it's remarkable, and you've so much more to tell and so much more to live, and experience. I would love to leave two last questions. One is, what empowers you? What as a woman and you as Mary Claire empowers you?
I think my mother empowers me. My mother was an incredible being. And you talk about growing up in a time where women were not as
Mhm.
valued as men. My mother could have built a house. She could have literally done the drawings and built a house. My father, and they were such champions of one another. My father couldn't build a house, nor did he even want to build a house. I mean, they were very different. And I think of all the things that she could have done that she never got the chance to do. She died very young.
Mhm.
And I think that in my heart of hearts, I want to be someone that she would be so proud of, that
And
she had me.
you know she is.
Oh, I certainly hope so.
Absolutely. You
I
and I talked
certainly
about.
hope so. I
Oh,
do.
you and I both know that she's watching over, and I truly believe
And she really is the one that still empowers me. I'll
that's
be honest
amazing.
with you. And my daughter. Oh my God, people, you admire me, and I really appreciate that. Heather is so much better of a person than I will ever be. And I am so honored that she
But
is
also,
in my life.
but your daughter, but also your grandchildren and your son.
Yes. Oh
Your
my
son
God,
who,
both of them.
was, I mean, we can spend time talking about your children, but
Yes.
John's incredible and served in the military, and just
And
when
have
he's,
such respect for women
yeah, I mean, he's just
and their
the
abilities.
nicest
Yes,
human
he's a
being.
good,
And
good
he went
man.
through, anyone that's a whole nother topic about going to war and sacrificing. And I
Yes.
remember him leaving and coming back, and it's what he gave up for our country.
Yes. Yes.
Really. But as you talk about, her daughter Heather is just one of the most incredible women who gives back, and always, no matter what her time is, she always
Giving
finds
back.
time to give
Always.
for others. And so they're a reflection of you, and that's why so no matter, they really truly, and I
Well,
just
that's
adore
I
them as well, and I'm happy they're in my world. I'm so thankful for you. I'm
thank
so
you,
thankful for
Elaine.
you, going on Her Stories, because you, as I
And you
said,
also are a gift in my life. Know that also.
thank you, thank you,
You're
thank you.
very, very welcome.
And I will definitely have Mary Claire on again. And I just want to thank everyone for listening. And there's so many more stories. And, Mary Claire has, we've been talking about a one woman show. I mean, she is
Yes.
truly, there's a lot that we can continue to share. And thank you for being here on my couch with me.
You are very welcome.
And thank you for everyone listening. And I will have another episode of Her Stories coming up soon. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you. Bye.
Oh, you were fantastic.